All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. I'd like to take a moment and introduce our March webinar, Strategic Planning for Social Entrepreneurs, with our wonderful speaker, Alicia Marseille. To get started, I'm just going to go through a few housekeeping details. You might notice that on the left-hand side of your screen, there is a chat box, and we are going to have the format very informal this time. So we're going to be asking questions all throughout. So if you have a question that you would like to ask our speaker, feel free to go ahead and type that into your chat box on the left-hand side of your screen. And I'm going to go ahead and do a little test here. I'm going to write a welcome message so then you can see where that is. Perfect. And also, if you're having any issues, either with audio or just connectivity issues, I would suggest first checking your volume. Sometimes that just kind of messes things up. So check that it's at the appropriate level. And also, just go ahead and close any other programs that you may have open. So this is a great way to just kind of double check yourself, go ahead and check your volume and make sure that you closed all other programs. And if you keep having issues, go ahead and log off and log back on to the webinar. Sometimes just resetting is all you really need to do. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our wonderful speaker, Alicia Marseille. In 2007, Alicia Marseille founded an international business working with a democratic group of farmers in Haiti to import raw green coffee and distribute to wholesalers in the U.S. She's a creative business analyst and now director of the Arizona Women's Education and Entrepreneur Center. The AWC is hosted at AWE and is funded in part through a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Small Business Administration. So I would like to turn it over to our wonderful speaker, Alicia, who's going to be talking to us about strategic planning for social entrepreneurs.
Sorry, that was me, Laura and Meredith. But I'll do my intro again. I'm so excited to be here. Social entrepreneurship is something I'm extremely passionate about. As Kendall mentioned, I worked with a democratic group of coffee farmers in Haiti, 25,000 farmers in the cooperative. My husband's Haitian, and at the time of the earthquake was exporting and importing full containers of coffee and distributing to micro roasters across the US. And I was really able to see the impact that it was having to help farmers to grow and produce more, and from the income they received. And also was able to solve a lot of issues in supply chain that a lot of micro farmers around the world often run into, being more of a direct source. So it was amazing to see the direct impact in the community, as well as making money and having a business. So this slide here, this is just really an overview of what we're going to go over today. We're going to define and understand social entrepreneurship. We're going to understand it from the standpoint for those who are currently interested in this, as well as those of you that have an inclination and think, this is interesting. I'd like to implement this in my business, but not sure how. We're going to talk about the triple bottom line: people, planet, and profit. We're going to look at how to understand and measure your impact as it relates to that triple bottom line. And we're going to identify ways to integrate this into your operations, marketing, and financial plans, and also have a few slides on how to look for funding for social entrepreneurs. I'm really informal. Would love this webinar to be interactive and engaging, so please ask questions in that chat box, and I will be more than happy to answer them as they come in. I want people to definitely get the most they can out of this. So let's get started. I think something to think about is there are a lot of variations when it comes to this concept of social entrepreneurship. You hear these buzzwords everywhere: green business, B corporation, which you can now apply for here in Arizona as of January 2015, sustainable business models, impact ventures, social business, social enterprise, which is usually more with the nonprofit sector. Ecopreneur is a new one. I think something that's also worth mentioning is that some people don't even use the label. It's actually ingrained in their business model. I recently had the chance to hear Tuft and Needle speak at Startup Week here in Phoenix, and they are a local company here in Phoenix. You may want to check out their website if you have the chance and some of their marketing information. They don't label themselves as social entrepreneurs or green business or any of those terms. They just have it ingrained in their business model in terms of creating a direct source for people sourcing mattresses and asking people to look at how mattresses are currently made. And they built their whole model on transparency and values. So I think it's important you don't have to use those terms to define yourself as a social entrepreneur, but you can still integrate the impact concepts in your business. Can any of you name any businesses outside of Tuft and Needle that fall into categories maybe inside or outside of our communities? They could be national companies, they could be international companies, they could be local ones that are currently doing these types of things. Yes, Goodman's. Yes, they are they are a B Corp, and they were one of the first B Corps in the state. They do a lot in terms of their operations and such with social entrepreneurship and the triple bottom line. Fair Trade Cafe is another one for people, the Phoenicians, people here in the Valley. They do a lot in terms of sourcing green materials for their paper products. They're a coffee shop. They do a lot of composting, working towards zero waste. That's another really good one. Okay, we're going to go to the next slide. I think there are huge companies that are doing this. And so this is a picture, a photo from the B Corp website, Benefit Corporation website. Companies like Ben & Jerry's, Patagonia, Dansko, Seventh Generation, these are Etsy, these are all benefit corporations and people that really look at getting a return not only as a company in their profits and their financials, but also in the community, different communities in the environment. What is a social entrepreneur? Standard definitions, if you look at sites that really provide a lot of information and kind of were the pioneers of social entrepreneurship, Ashoka is a really well-known one. I'll type it in the chat box there. But social entrepreneurs have an unwavering, very persistent standpoint in terms of how to provide innovative and practical solutions to solving problems. They don't have to be huge global problems, although sometimes they are. They're just really passionate about making a difference. They also look to measure their impact and get a good understanding of what are we doing in the community or with the environment, and is it working? I think it's also important to notate here, and I will several times, that you don't technically, again, have to be a social entrepreneur to make a difference, but this is technically how it's defined. I definitely have an unwavering belief to make a difference. So I definitely probably would be more on the social entrepreneur side. Social entrepreneurship. So I love this image here. Hopefully all of you can see this image because it really shows how it cuts across the sectors and traditional models. In terms of nonprofits, you have on the left side there traditional charities, which we know really drive towards social or environmental missions, right? They don't drive towards the profit side. Then on the far right side, you've got that blue circle of traditional business models where they're just purely profit oriented. They're driving towards pleasing their investors and building that bottom line. It's more on the financial value. And then somewhere in the middle, we have the social entrepreneurship. You have people that are sometimes a mix between the charity and social enterprise. There's more of a social enterprise. And then you have more that are more like businesses. They're mission driven, but they're also looking to generate a strong bottom line and profit. Those are the B Corps. Triple bottom line. Have all of you heard this term before? I think it's definitely, you're seeing it more and more described in terms of this. Social entrepreneurship, people that look for a return socially, environmentally, and economically, because the economic value in terms of generating a profit helps organizations or companies to do what? Be financially sustainable, right? If they're looking in terms of the social and the people aspects of the return, then they're looking at their level of social responsibility. And then, of course, the environmental, the planet accountability allows companies to measure, what are we doing in terms of our outputs in the environment, and are we being responsible? So the triple bottom line allows people to really take into consideration not just are we making money, because we have to be financially sustainable, whether you're a nonprofit or a business, but are we also generating a return in our communities and in the environment and being responsible? One thing that when you're looking at triple bottom line and social entrepreneurship, you want to identify what problems are we solving. So, for example, Fair Trade Cafe, they're a coffee shop located here in Phoenix. And coffee shops, you've got a lot of people who use paper cups. You're driving to work, you go in for a cup of coffee or your coffee and walk out. So they see that a necessary need in their company is to have cups, paper cups, right? But the output of that is what? Waste, right? So how do they spent some time to understand how do we reduce the amount of waste, knowing that these paper cups are a necessary part of our operations. They looked for compostable materials, right? So you look at the problem, understand what is the scale of this problem, how big is it, what are the root causes, how is it tied to what you do, and then you start to understand what is the opportunity, how do we solve this? And you could even do some research and figure out what are other approaches that people have tried and what results did they achieve. What would the world look like if you really started to work towards solving that problem? So for fair trade, again, it's moving towards zero waste. So I think all of us could envision what the world would look like if we all work towards zero waste. I actually saw in India a company this week, one of the major news sources published that a company in India started manufacturing edible spoons and sporks to eliminate the waste of once people go out to eat or buy food on the street, they have to buy plastic forks. So they make edible sporks, which is amazing. I love that idea. Could be an opportunity for somebody to import those sporks here. But it's moving towards zero waste. So looking at the problem, what is the opportunity, and how do we integrate this into what we're doing? Impact. So the first part of the triple bottom line, social impact. So understanding what is the effect of what we're doing in the community and on the well-being of specific individuals or families. A lot of nonprofits, they're really good at this part. They're really strong in understanding what services do we provide in accordance with our mission, and how is that giving something back to the community. Businesses can start to understand and look at what that would mean, right? There's a local business it's a restaurant here in the Valley, and she uses cans in her business for, beverages instead of fountain or bottle. And then she recycles the cans and has started a scholarship fund for girls to go to school. So she recycles the aluminum, uses that money to save, and has developed a small scholarship fund for girls going to college. So that's an example of a business saying, okay, how amazing would it be if I could support the young women in our community and provide them more resources to go to school if I just, recycled cans instead of using soda fountains or bottles. Can any of you think of a business or a nonprofit that has a huge effect on our communities and well-being of our different individuals and families and what they're doing? You guys haven't had your coffee yet. That's okay, me neither. 1 cup. But this is important to start to think about as a business owner. What could I be doing in my coffee business? I really had started to think about helping them to form more of a formal cooperative and what that would look like. I worked in northern Ghana with a group of women in the shea butter industry and helped them to establish more of a formal cooperative structure in their business and with shea butter. And so cooperatives can often help communities to organize and build a business together and combine their resources. And I definitely use that in my marketing and telling the story, the idea of helping them to build the cooperative and what impact that would have on their community. You'll see a lot of my examples. I'm really passionate about agribusiness. The other impact, which we hear a lot about in terms of businesses, large and small, is the environmental impact. Businesses have to look at the input. What goes into their business, their products and their services, and what are adverse effects that those could have on the environment. That little infographic down there gives you a good understanding of, if it was a traditional manufacturing company, you have materials, you have supplies, and then you have to manufacture it, and what goes into that, the different types of energy, air conditioning, lighting. So understanding your impact would be looking at, where do you source your materials? Could you source your materials from a more responsible or direct connection to that source? Looking at how much energy is required to produce your product. Reducing your energy will help to obviously create a more or less adverse effects on the environment. And then the output, what kind of waste and how do you reduce that waste, whether it's CO2 or whether it's just actual physical waste. Can you compost raw material? Can you source your edible sporks from India? But it's really trying to think outside the box to understand what those are. Can any of you guys think of certain types of waste that your business uses? Are there any restaurants on here, or cafes, traditional organizations that do more like workshops and do a lot of printed material or a lot of office type work, have a ton of waste. The chat room's really quiet, Kendall. Oh, there we go. HVAC. We recycle small bits of metals. That's awesome. Where do you guys recycle the bits of, or what do you do once you recycle the small bits of metals? Do you do anything with the funds, or you just put it right back in the business, which is also smart? Noel. Back into the business. That's awesome. Because remember, triple bottom line, you got to be financially sustainable. So putting it back in your business is also great. Courtney has office supplies and furniture in terms of, and they recycle used and end of life electronics, including plastics. Oh my God, that's amazing. Because I don't think people realize what happens with end of life electronics. What happens when you just take your computer screen out to the trash? Probably doesn't decompose anywhere within a couple centuries. But do you guys, when you guys recycle the electronic parts and different plastics, do you guys use a specific source, and do you know what happens to that there? Courtney? Because that would be an amazing story to tell in your marketing. What happens when you guys recycle the end-of-life electronics and saving them from the landfills and such, and where they go would be an amazing way to share your story and create some marketing opportunities for you. And paper, I think we've kind of gotten away from different ways to recycle paper. And in the office, it can just mean creating more scrap pieces of paper, which are hard to keep track of. But there's a lot of different things that we still waste, but we aren't cognizant of the things that we used to be, more so the simple recycling in the paper and such. Laura says that they've been environmentally responsible to the extent possible since opening. Way too many ways to list here. I love that. You should take up the whole chat room, Laura. It's huge. It's huge. It makes a huge difference. There's also an online calculator called TerraPath, through an organization called TerraPath, that you can actually calculate some of what you're doing in your organization in terms of being environmentally responsible. And you can use that in your marketing, but it also lets you to see how many trees does it take to offset the carbon that you're conserving through your efforts to recycle, and it lets you see how much you're actually using, which I've also seen people use in their marketing. It's a great tool. It's an actual calculator. Sorry if there's any spelling errors. But TerraPath is spelled right there. So the other impact is your financial impact. And I'm a huge numbers person. I'm the daughter of an economics professor, so somewhat of an unfair advantage. But I've learned through my own business, and it was the first thing when I started my business. I was so passionate about the mission side and the social and the environmental side. My dad said, "That's great, but you have to make money. Like, you're doing this as a business." And so those words have resonated with me even to this day. And I teach a lot of classes on finance for small business because it's so important to understand, even if you're a nonprofit, are you financially sustainable, managing your cash flow and generating a profit? I think it's also important to think about, when you are looking at the other two aspects of the triple bottom line, the people and the planet side, how much do those cost? And are they as costly as you think to implement in your operations? But if you can see the number side of the financial impact, it'll allow you to make more educated decisions on how to implement things in your operations in terms of the social and environmental aspects. David says that they have an energy impact, and they source their energy powering their business facility and fuel for vehicles. Oh, so they must have some type of energy conservation. Yeah. Oh, you're saying energy impact. Yeah, energy is another. Would you categorize that, David, though, under the environmental side? Because you're absolutely right. People don't look at the input of energy that goes into their business and how they're sourcing their energy to power their business facility. Fuel for the vehicles. That TerraPath calculator will actually make you think about that too, in terms of, if you have a some type of delivery or part of your business, or you're going to see clients, how much energy are you using in your vehicles and how are you powering those? All good, David, no worries. Love to see the enthusiasm because the energy is huge. People don't realize, how much energy they use, and, conserving that, what a big difference it could mean. That TerraPass calculator is an awesome source to calculate your actual energy usage and the carbon impacts, as well as when you see it in terms of how many trees it would require, it makes you think I'd have to plant trees probably for the rest of my life to sustain what I'm doing in my business, which would then make you think about how can I change this, right? Laura says that Native Energy is one of the many nonprofits that offers carbon write-offs via a monthly or annual payment. They also have a calculator for your energy impacts. That's amazing. I got to remember that link. Is that local, Laura, or is that something outside Arizona? That would be worth looking into, everybody, for sure. So Laura said Native Energy. They're a nonprofit and they offer carbon write-offs via a monthly or annual payment, which is huge. So they're incentivizing it, right? Because everybody lives for incentives. She says it's not an AZ, but would love to know if there's a local comparable. I'm not sure. That would be worth looking into. It'd be awesome. Also, I'd encourage all of you to look at their business model. Even though they're a nonprofit, they have a model in terms of what they're doing, who they serve, how they're funded. It'd be worth looking into. Are they getting carbon credits? Are they funded through carbon credits? That's amazing. That's a great source. So moving on from the financials, why is impact important? I think before even addressing that entirely, it's important to look at the evolution of impact. So when people first started measuring impact and social entrepreneurship started, they started just looking at it from accountability standpoint. The metrics really just tried to hold people accountable. And then we saw what happened. People started greenwashing. You see all these CSR reports coming out through companies like DuPont, like, yes, we're very sustainable. And then it was kind of like, yeah, probably not so much. So then the standards started to look at how do we create common standards or some type of standardization around what type of impact are you doing, or what is important in terms of social and environmental, and financial is kind of unlimited, but what are those standards? And then you saw the rise of benefit corporations, B Corps, right? So that's a new legal business entity that you can file here in Arizona, which does hold you, if you become certified, does hold you accountable to standards. And there is a standardization that they follow. So companies like Patagonia, Goodman's, Etsy, those are all benefit corporations, and they drive their whole business model back to that triple bottom line. And I think what's exciting is now the new metrics that we're seeing is really towards creating value. So it's kind of metrics 3.0, taking it to the next step. How do we really create value? And you're starting to see more innovation there. So, and when you're trying to figure out how do I measure my impact, how do I measure my triple bottom line in terms of what I'm doing? Remember back to before, you wanted, what are you trying to do? How do you define your outputs and the outcomes you're looking for? And then how do you capture this data, right? I love data, so I get crazy with spreadsheets. Excel, you could use Excel, it's very easy. And then producing materials to tell your story about what you're doing, and how it's making an impact. I think you're starting to, we are starting to see consumers become more conscientious in terms of how they spend their money with what those companies do. So they're forcing companies to also become more responsible. Are any of you currently measuring any impact in your business? And what types of things are you measuring, and how do you track those things? I'll give people a few seconds because I know if you're texting, it can be hard get all your ideas out really fast, even using two thumbs. I track, I've always tracked in all my endeavors what I'm doing as much as I can. Our right now we're in the U.S. Small Business Administration Women's Business Center. We really, under our aim and objective, is to assist business owners. So we provide free resources and tools and workshops, in terms of helping businesses start, expand, and grow. So our outputs are helping businesses to start, right? Helping businesses to expand their revenues. So we look at the revenue growth we've helped generate, capital, getting money to grow their business, and the amount of impact in the community. So how many people are we actually reaching in what we're doing? And to capture that right now, we're using a database and then Excel to keep track of all those things. It's also important to think about how often you go back and look at those things. And I tell the story all the time. Whenever I'm out trying to talk to new community partners, I'm always telling this story. Same in the coffee. I worked really hard to get the numbers in regards to the 25,000 farmers. They had worked with USAID prior to me coming in, and USAID had helped them set up a common washing, and basically production facility, super low tech. And don't think anything fancy, no technology, no electricity, but had helped them to start with a facility that helped them to get to where they wanted to be with the coffee. And so my aim and my objective initially was, how do I include all of these farmers and then understand, on average, what's the size of their families, right? So that I could really start to look at the impact in the community. Environment was a little bit hard. There was, right when the earthquake happened, we were trying to figure out how to measure, water usage and helping them to change some of their practices on the washing, with the washing stations and washing the coffee. But tools of measurement for that were really, because we were really far out in the countryside, nowhere near the city. So that was where we were when the earthquake happened, and trying to measure the environment side. But then I use that in my marketing and telling the story all the time. This was 2007, so keep in mind, most people were like, oh, you're a nonprofit. No, I'm a business. But it was huge, because then people were interested in, wow, you're sourcing an amazing coffee, but you're also working with, building a community. How many of you out there have heard of TOMS? I found this, and this is a business model generation canvas, or the lean canvas model, but this blew me away. This could be a tool that you use to help you understand in your business model. I'm going to type in there the link if you want to find the canvas online and you're not familiar with it. Business model generation canvas. A free tool, but they laid out Tom's business model. So it allows you to look at your overall strategy. I hate to use the word plan anymore, because this is really more of a tool to figure out your business strategy, your model, and how do you test this? Does it work? Can we afford this? Are we targeting the right people? And then constantly manage to what works and change what doesn't work, right? Companies like GE even use this type of canvas now. But you see Tom's on there. The purple boxes are, the more the business side of what they do. And then the light blue really helps them to look at the social and environmental aspects of their business model. So then you're really able to see, how does this fit into the greater scheme of what I'm doing? And then it'll help you to start to understand the whole thing sits on the financials, right? Can we afford this? What does it look like if we afford it? It'll help you to integrate it into the marketing and who you're selling to. And then also on the flip side with Tom's, you'll see on their customer segment, the purple, who they're selling to, but then it's also who they're delivering the products to. The 1 for 1, you buy 1 pair of shoes, they donate a pair of shoes. So you see both sides of that model there. Do any of you guys have questions about this canvas here, this model with Tom's? I would take some time and look at this. There's actually a pretty great graphic. Sharon wants to know, will we get a copy of this deck after the webinar? Yep, absolutely. Because you want to know, I think a lot of people when they're starting their business want to know, how is this going to affect my my business or my organization, especially on the financial side. What is it going to look like? It's really important. Understanding impact. So who doesn't love ice cream? And Ben and Jerry's is an amazing company that really drives towards the idea of a triple bottom line. They stay connected to their suppliers, so who they source the dairy from, the farmers, the people that work for their company, franchisees, their customers, everybody. I don't know if we have time right now. Do we have time, Kendall? Yeah. We're going to click on that first link and if you have, I would take some time and go through those other two links in here as well. I created this to also create some resources for you to go back into. So that would have been really weird if we didn't. Kendall said no, we couldn't share the deck. But go back in and look at these links because it does an amazing job. And maybe let's scroll down a little bit. It does an amazing job. So there's a video up there, which you could easily create. You don't need to have a fancy production crew come in and create your video. But it shows their overall, so it's kind of like taking that Tom's business model canvas and creating a marketing tool and a little bit of a report to show what you're doing. It shows how they implement the triple bottom line and what their values are. I think that's important to go back to. I kind of mentioned with the tufted needle, what are your values? And then this doesn't just become part of your business, it's actually the values of your business. So they take the climate aspect of their business model really seriously. The GMO labeling, they take a lot of things into consideration in their business that aren't just part of, oh, we're doing this to be responsible. It's more about this is what we value. And then they use these graphics and videos in their report to tell that story of what they're doing and really show you the triple bottom line. So then you see the accountability, you see back to those metrics, how we've kind of gone from 1.0 to 3.0, but now you see that it's more of a values-based system, not just creating a standard. It's this, we're doing this and we're doing it this way because this is what we value. Yeah, that's perfect. So and then on that that slide back into the webinar here, you'll see that there's a link to their actual report. I've spent some time looking at different corporate sustainability reports to get a good understanding of what different people publish. And again, I look at people like DuPont because New York Times has done some great investigative reporting recently on DuPont and what they're doing. And seeing what different companies report. And it's interesting because they haven't gotten quite to the value side. But in looking at Ben and Jerry's, you see the value side, but you also see their audit, and they are a B Corp. So that last link there is the, if you wanted to become a B Corp, what are the reporting requirements that you have to report out? So Benefit Corporation is that standard standardization model for businesses. So how can you create impact in your operations? There's lots of ways you can integrate it into your operations to increase your impact. You can create environmental standards, everything from your suppliers, things that you get inputs into making your product or delivering your service, and then showcasing what are the outputs, what are the benefits of doing that. And it could be as simple to start with, if it's not suppliers, back to the what David said on understanding your energy impact. You know, we have standards in terms of really trying to understand and implement things to reduce the amount of energy that we're using. It could also be as simple as professional development. Why do you think professional development is creating a positive impact for your operations? You're providing an opportunity for your employees to grow, and when they grow, it's not only great for your company, but it's also great for the community. I work with a local restaurant here in Phoenix at DeSoto called Adobo Dragon. It's a Filipino restaurant. The owner is amazing. He's just amazing guy. And he does professional development for he's a small staff, 5, 6 people, but he provides professional development for his employees every month. And every month he sends his employees to different restaurants to report back on their experience, the menu, what are they, customer service, and what are the types of things that they can learn from what happened in that restaurant and implement directly to where they are. He even pays for their time. Sometimes he sends them to some of our classes on financial management and marketing. So he wants his employees to grow, which is advantageous for his business and the community. Community service. So sending your employees to go and do something in the community and volunteer. Health insurance. Sometimes it's not always possible or affordable. It might be cheaper for employees to go into the marketplace, but health insurance and benefits. Non-C-level bonuses. So providing employees who are not executives, and even if you have a staff of like 5 people, right? How do you provide some type of bonus structure for employees to feel valued and be compensated for it? And it could be as simple as, we don't want to say Starbucks card because we don't drink Starbucks, but a certificate to go to Cartel Coffee or a local business, or it could be actual bonuses in their salaries. But you'll see the icon there creates more of a horizontal type organization versus vertical. And then women ownership. So providing opportunities and options for growth, especially or supporting women-owned businesses and organizations. You could volunteer and assist them to help them grow. I actually learned a statistic this past week that if women business owners were to operate at their same capacity as their male counterparts, it would add 3.2 trillion to the GDP. 90% of women-owned businesses don't even have one employee. If all those businesses were to hire one employee, it would add 2.2 million jobs. So doing what you can to support women owners would be huge for the community. What are some of the ways that you guys are currently doing this in your operations? Or if not any of those things, but something different? We would love to hear. Kendall from Local First here says that they have an annual report demonstrating the impact they've made in the community this past year. I bet it's on Local First website. You may want to look at that because you can mimic it and you can create a report. You don't have to hire a graphic designer. You could use Microsoft Publisher to create a report to showcase what you're doing and post it on your website. David sources materials. He uses responsible sourcing of materials and solar energy. Responsible sourcing of materials is huge. I think it's gotten a lot more attention recently because companies like Patagonia, it was even discovered that they weren't sourcing their all the way down the supply chain as far as they could, and from a good being responsible in terms of where they get their materials from. And again, it could be as simple as paper. It doesn't have to be, food-based products or anything of that nature. Noelle gives devoured gift cards as employees bonuses on the holidays. That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, that's great. I don't want to beat this one to a dead horse. Actually, I'm going to skip past this because we've talked about it. There's a lot of tools for measuring your impact. Excel, again, is really easy because you could set it up and really to measure what you want and how often. There's other standard and recognized tools out there. There's the B impact assessment. That's a great tool to see kind of get a benchmark of where you stand. And that second one is a little bit more complex, but it gives you a really great metrics tool. So those are great links you're going to want to spend maybe a few minutes to look at. The other thing is marketing. I think this is underused by a lot of businesses. And how do you leverage what you're doing in your marketing? I think you want to know what you're doing and who you're selling to, and is that important to them? I saw a great article this week about they call it green muting. The businesses aren't telling enough of what they're doing in terms of social and environmental impact, but they interviewed one of the executives from Timberland, the company that makes the shoes, the fashion company. They do a ton of things, but they don't talk about it. And so in the interview, they asked why. And the lady from Timberland said, because our customers, it's not what drives them to buy our products, but it's still on their website, right? So they don't use it as much, but it's still available for people to look at. So you want to know, the people that we're selling to, is that of a value to them? And even if it's not, you still want to use it, maybe not as aggressively, but you want to use it, integrate it into your communication, the calendar, the different tools, the platforms, social media, and then creating some type of report to showcase over the course of the year what you've done. Are any of you currently using what you're doing in terms of social environmental impact in your marketing communications? Tough to Needle, I know, does a great job locally of marketing it in their communications of what they do and the impact. A lot of nonprofits do. Nonprofits you see a lot in the Valley. Large ones like Goodwill, all the way down to smaller ones. Like the one that I currently run, we do a lot in terms of talking about what we're doing. It could be memes, it could be GIFs, it could be formal reports. It could be, I think to think about is you want to drip it out over time and tell the story, and then it could be as formal or informal as you want it to be, but you definitely want to leverage and figure out how to use that impact. And the last part of your triple bottom line, finance. I love this saying, no money, no mission, because you have to be profitable, right? Even if you're a nonprofit, you got to figure out how to sustain your organization and your growth. And I think sustainability from a social and environmental aspect for businesses is not as expensive as they think. It just really comes down to how do you use a 12-month cash flow tool to understand how the different changes you want to implement will affect your business financially. Because then it'll help you to make an educated decision and feel more confident. Even if it's as simple as changing your supplier or getting solar panels, or what does that look like? So then you can say, oh, we need to do this. We can do this, and it'll be amazing. If you're looking for funding for your business or nonprofit, there's a lot of different resources out there. I put impact investors because there are a ton now of investors, even angel investors, and even people who invest smaller amounts of capital into businesses and nonprofits that have this triple bottom line concept. There is one that actually funded a large amount of funding recently in the last couple of years here in Arizona. There's one called RSF Capital. That's really good. I'll type it in. They do things for nonprofit and for profits, and they do seed money all the way up to big expansions. USAID is an international arm of the federal government, and they have an awesome new type of funding for social entrepreneurs, people that are solving global problems, but it's called the Development Innovation Ventures. That link there will take you and show you. The other thing to think about is there's a new type of legal entity. It's not in Arizona yet, but it's called an L3C. Put the definition there, but basically is almost like a hybrid of a nonprofit and a for-profit. It allows you to get extremely low rate loans from foundations. So you're able to get money from foundations it's not grants. It is money you have to pay back, but the rates and the terms are amazing. And then you're also supporting the foundation. I think the other thing to think about, and I get this question asked a lot, is, I'm doing all these things. I'm a social entrepreneur, or I want to implement these things. How do I get financing for this? If you're looking for financing, back to that the profitable side of your business, there's really not much of a difference. You can also go the traditional route of getting funding, whether it be a bank or traditional investors. The difference, because they're going to want to see that you're profitable. What are you doing this money, and are you going to be able to sustain the growth? So traditional route of funding is also advantageous to look into as well. The benefit of going the route of somebody like RSF Capital or impact investors or people that do loans to social or environmental based businesses is that they get the value side of it. And there are a lot of organizations that will give you really great rates. They're not looking to generate a huge amount on the profit side. And there are a ton of resources in here to different publications. I'm kind of giving you the links to the organizations that I get a lot of good up-to-date information on. Stanford has a great one. They're constantly publishing that SSIR. They're constantly publishing new things in terms of triple bottom line. Huffington Post has a section. There's a lot of really great publications out there. So that's really the final slide. We've got about 5 minutes left. Would love to see if any of you guys have questions, things that you wish I had covered I didn't, ideas, anything that you'd like to ask. Laura said, do I know if L3C, Laura wants to know, are L3Cs in the works for Arizona? Not yet. They're kind of where benefit corps were, I would say 5, 6, 7 years ago. I think there's only 10 states right now that recognize it. You could register your business in that state to be able to take advantage of that. If that's a direction you want to go. They are a great legal entity, but they're not anywhere in the works for Arizona, not yet. It took 2 years for benefit corps to go through here in Arizona. And actually Seed Spot was the one that worked on that. So if there's any organizations online that want to spearhead that would be amazing. Kind of takes an organization to take on getting the whole process started. Maybe we can ask SeedSpot. Any funding opportunities for developing diverse talent in senior positions? Do you mean getting money to provide opportunities for continuing ed to develop senior leaders? Oh yeah, there are a lot of leadership trainings and organizations here in the Valley. American Express has one for nonprofit leaders. Valley Leadership is definitely more of a corporate one. I've got a lot of peers that go through the Hispanic Leadership Institute, which is and they're not Hispanic, but you don't necessarily have to be Hispanic, but the Hispanic arm of Valley Leadership. I've had they call it Valle de Sol, the Hispanic Leadership Institute. I've heard wonderful things about that. I also know of an organization that's going to start looking to develop a leadership program that's a little bit more cutting edge and kind of along the lines of where other larger communities like ours how they're developing leadership programs. So stay tuned for that. But I know that the Hispanic Leadership Institute, the Valley Leadership, I'm not sure of any in Tucson, if any of you in Tucson or Flagstaff are online and have ideas for those, go ahead and put them in the chat room, because that's also huge. To grow your organization, you can source from those and take advantage of those programs to do that. There's also a lot of opportunities for international, for exporting and importing, for businesses, probably nonprofits as well, but in terms of social entrepreneur based businesses and companies, whether it's related to suppliers or if it's related to so on the importing side, or if it's related to exporting and getting your products or services overseas, there's a ton for that. Actually, a lot of the state has programs that they actually will pay for you to help you to go through that process and help connect you with customers and banks overseas, letter of credit, all those types of things. There's a lot of resources for that. I'm a huge fan of international business. Laura Key says Tucson has a program for young leaders, businesses, and nonprofits that, if she recalls correctly, it runs 20 people. They have 20 participants a year. That's awesome. I like that they actually mix all of those, because a lot of the programs here seem to separate them out, and I think they all have a lot of huge opportunities to learn from each other, and it helps create, I think, a bigger impact and greater dialogue for the community by bringing all three of those together. That's amazing. Courtney said, is that through the Chamber of Commerce? Do you mean the international portion? Oh, the training in Tucson. Is that from the Chamber of Commerce? Laura, do you know if that program's through the Chamber of Commerce? Oh, she doesn't know the details. I bet you could Google exactly what Laura typed there. Tucson program for young leaders, business owners, and nonprofits. That would be huge to take advantage. I think also great to take advantage of, because you're going to meet and network with other like-minded people who want to grow and create some positive, amazing things in the community. So I think that's it. I hope all of you enjoyed this. If you ever would like to get in touch with any further questions, I think my email is on the first slide, so you can do that. Never hesitate. Always willing to reach out and help. Have a wonderful day, and thank you.
We would like to thank our speaker, Alicia. This has been an incredible overview, and kind of gets the ball rolling to think about how our impact can really be marketed, and how we're going to actually see that return on investment from that impact in the community. So there's a lot of different avenues that you can go down. So I so appreciate Alicia taking the time out of her busy schedule to just kind of talk to us and really turn those wheels and see how we can work towards a better Arizona. And on that note, I really encourage all of you, we talk about it all the time, but even just collaborating with other local businesses can do so much. And I think that people really want to see how you as a business owner are collaborating with other business owners. One of the best examples that I have is Julie Rustad of Julie's Originals in Tucson. She's a local artist, and she actually paired up with I think it was an attorney or something of the sort. Very different fields, right? But they actually came up with a calendar that they distribute out to the general public. And she gets to display her artwork, which is on the actual calendar, and the other person gets to have their logo on there. So, Devour gift cards is a great way, just kind of encouraging that positive reinforcement for how people are, treating the environment and waste, and just basically making a better Arizona for everybody. So thank you so much for everybody to take the time out. I'm going to distribute the recording of this webinar, and we are going to make sure that you have Alicia's contact information as well. And from Laura, she says, would love to see another seminar focusing on B Corps, how to get a sense of whether they're for you. That is great, Laura. We are so excited that you want to see more of this. So look out. We've got some great things on the horizon. So we will make sure to get you as many resources as possible. All right, everybody have a great day, and we'll see you next month.